Over the weekend, 3 Americans were killed and 3 wounded by an ISIS terrorist in Syria. 2 National Guardsmen from Iowa and a civilian interpreter. And then, of course, 16 killed and some 40 injured in a terrorist attack on a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach in Australia. On Friday, German police arrested 5 men, 3 Moroccans, a Syrian, and an Egyptian, on suspicion of planning an attack on a Christmas market. That same night, a Jewish home in Redlands, California was shot up. The ADL, who was in touch with the victim, said that a suspect shouted anti-Semitic slurs and fired 20 rounds into the home, which was clearly decorated with Hanukkah decorations. So we're reverting to a post 9/11 world in which we have disparate radical Islamist state sponsors, terrorist organizations, radicalized quote-unquote lone wolves focused on terrorizing the law-abiding in the West, with a specific but not limited focus on Jewish people. And this against the backdrop of 4 years of open borders, and as we mentioned earlier in the program, Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, recently saying that her office has identified upwards of 18,000 individuals in this country illegally with ties to terrorist organizations. Well, I shouldn't even necessarily say in this country illegally, just ties to terrorist organizations. They could be technically in this country legally when you have Joe Biden, for example, confer legal status to 100,000 Afghan asylum seekers, right? So we've completely, some of us, not we the collective, but some of us have completely forgotten our carefree attitude towards radical Islamist terrorism that led up to 9/11, or even that led up to the first World Trade Center bombing. It has receded that far in our memories that we don't understand the ever-present threat. We weren't paying attention for the last 2 years with what was going on in Gaza after the October 7th terrorist attack. Somewhat remarkable, isn't it? Our lack of vigilance. For more on this, Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us for our weekly chat.
It's good to be on the show. Unfortunately, the subjects are pretty disheartening.
Yeah. There was a report in the Daily Mail that suggests that terrorist attack in Australia conducted by that father and son terrorist tandem could have been the handiwork of the terrorists in charge of Iran. Israeli intelligence services identified Tehran as the prime suspect behind the Bondi Beach terror attack that killed 16, including a 10-year-old girl, including an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor. The attack, according to Israeli intel, appeared sophisticated and well-planned with the hallmarks of Unit 910, Hezbollah's external operations arm. There's also speculation about links to Hamas and the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is interesting because, of course, the 2 terrorists, father and son, were of Pakistani extraction, the father having come on a student visa to Australia in 1998. And it goes on to say, in August of 2025, Australia expelled Iran's ambassador over allegations he directed attacks against Jewish targets in Sydney and Melbourne, including December 2024 synagogue firebombing in Melbourne and an October 2024 cafe arson in Sydney. And that this is consistent with what you would see given that, according to another Israeli intel expert, Australia has long been known to be a hub for Hezbollah, so it could be a joint operation between Hezbollah and Quds. So, I mean, just given that, I know we can't say probably definitively at this time, but, give us your reaction to the intel reporting, including the intel that suggested Israel tried to communicate with Australia about the possibility of a terrorist attack, and apparently that warning went unheeded. Just sort of what we know, what you think this looks like, what the United States' posture should be.
Well, first of all, it's sad that we returned to this idea that was, the Clinton administration saying that, terrorists, we just need to leave it to the police. We don't need to do any extra measures. If it happens, we'll do an investigation. We'll apprehend them, and they'll get, a long, lengthy trial, and because that's the better way to do it, as opposed to a war-footing type response, where you realize that the other side is trying to kill you. They're not trying to steal your watch or anything else. They're there to kill you and kill as many of you as possible, where you need to take a different attitude towards that adversary. Look, this does look like it's coordinated. At the very least, on the great, terrorist chat networks that are out there, where there's a lot of loosely aligned people, not necessarily getting taskings from somebody. So I don't think there's one mastermind of this whole thing, but there's clearly people that were planting seeds, that were leveraging the growing support for people like Hamas and Hezbollah around the world, the growing ire against Israel and against the United States. Anybody who's surprised by this is full of themselves. They really are lying through their teeth. This is exactly what the left wants. This is exactly what the Islamists want, was a return to that very open, very tolerant attitude that we had prior to 9/11. Look, I don't like having to be on a war footing forever either. But when the other side hasn't given up yet, as is the case with the war on terror, people don't like that. They think that's a passé term, but it's not, because the other side is still fighting it. We have to respond exactly the right way. We should be listening to Israel's intel, and we should always at least consider it, if not act on it almost preemptively when you get it. The Australians have done a lot of delusional things in the last few years, right? They got rid of all their weapons in the country. So now no good guys have weapons. And their police apparently were hiding behind the cars in some cases.
Yes.
While a civilian went up and disarmed somebody and took a couple of shots doing it. Look, again, this doesn't mean every Muslim in the world is a criminal or a terrorist. But what was that number? 18,000 the Attorney General thinks are inside the United States that are
DNI, Gabbard, yeah.
Or Gabbard, the DNI, are living here. That's a lot of folks, 18,000. And that's like, bigger than a division in the Army. We have a 2-star general in charge of that size force. We got to do something. Sorry for the long answer, but this is just really irritating, the vapid response we get from over half of our leadership and electorate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be a concerted effort to try to, memory hole this or sanitize it as much as possible, because, of course, and to the extent that anybody wants to have a serious conversation of it, you'll just be slimed as a Islamophobe or something like that. So we don't have to be adult about these matters, because that's just the posture of maybe not half the country, but a disturbingly high percentage of it. There's no question. The seizure of an Iranian tanker en route to Cuba over the weekend. This is more, Trump neo-Monroe doctrine kind of activity, clearly. But if the Iranians are amping up attacks like the one that was committed on Bondi Beach, what should we be preparing for in response to this ratcheting up of pressure on Maduro and his allies in our hemisphere?
Well, hopefully we'll continue the pressure. Maduro has a very close relationship with the Iranians, as well as with Hezbollah, and I think Hamas as well, but definitely Hezbollah. And we need to keep the pressure there. We need to keep the pressure on Iran. We can't depend solely on the Israelis to protect us from these folks. We're going to have to take some steps too. Again, not advocating for war against these people, but we've seen that when the good guys turn around and say enough and bloody the nose of these countries, they back down. They're honestly cowards. They don't want to stand up fight because they know they'll lose. They want to keep doing this deniable terrorism.
It was a bizarre scene. I mean, it's almost something like out of a Richard Dreyfuss movie. I don't know if you saw it. I'm thinking Moon over Parador. But it was Maduro having a rally where he played Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy, and he was prancing around on stage, mouthing the words to Don't Worry, Be Happy. It's just so surreal because while that's going on in Caracas, Maria Corina Machado, who plans on returning to Venezuela from her sojourn in Denmark, she had this to say, much to the chagrin of Margie Brennan on Face the Nation yesterday, about what Trump is doing and the exact nature of the regime you're dealing with in Venezuela. And her perspective on the regime, I think, is important. Take a listen.
Look, I absolutely support President Trump's strategy, and we, the Venezuelan people, are very grateful to him and to his administration, because I believe he is a champion of freedom in this hemisphere. And that's why, and I say this from Oslo right now, I have dedicated this award to him, because I think that he finally has put Venezuela in where it should be in terms of a priority for the United States national security. And we do support these actions because, Margaret, we are facing not a conventional dictatorship. This is a very complex criminal structure that has turned Venezuela into a safe haven of international crime and terrorist activities, starting with Russia, Iran, Cuba, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Colombian guerrilla, the drug cartels operating freely and directed in partnership with Maduro and his regime. And as every criminal structure suffers is when the inflows from their criminal activities are cut. Mm-hmm. And this, in the case of the Maduro regime, comes from the oil black market, the drug trafficking, gold smuggling, arms smuggling, even human smuggling and trafficking.
I guess she was in Norway, not Denmark, but regardless, what she had to say about the regime there and that terrorist piece of it seems to me really critical. There's been an overemphasis on the narco trafficking because it's a narco state, but the connections to radical Islamist terrorism need renewed scrutiny and discussion given what's happened over the weekend, don't they?
Oh, 100%. And look, most of us that watch this, never let that part of it disappear. Though the media, for the most part, has made it look like it's just Trump picking on these poor fishermen that are forced into drug trafficking, as opposed to the idea that they're just soldiers in a narco-terrorist army, really, that is completely state-sponsored. Most of these folks around the world have some sort of state support somewhere, but in Maduro's case, it's over the top. If we're going to sit there and, one, listen to women, and two, listen to peace candidates and people like that, maybe the left should listen to this lady. And frankly, the right, who got upset that she got the Peace Prize, not President Trump, it's like, no, this lady knows that without President Trump taking the actions he's taking, she'd be in deep deep water here trying to survive. And why not listen to this woman? She knows what's going on inside her country. And I don't think it's a campaign ploy. I mean, this is real stuff. People's lives are at stake, not just in Venezuela, but around the world and in the United States, because this is a concerted effort to continue tearing down our social structure and to pit us against each other. But the left has got to give up this bizarre thing of if Trump is any way involved in it, it's got to be bad. They need to grow up. I don't care whether you dislike him. I don't care whether you dislike his style. If what he's doing is correct, we need to support him. And frankly, he's been right more than he's been wrong.
Well, I mean, there's some good news out of South America over the weekend, too, which is that free market-oriented guy defeated the socialist guy for the president of Chile. So we're getting some reinforcements when it comes to free minds and free markets in Latin America. I mean, in Latin and South America, at least some people who will join the fight with people like Milei in Argentina.
Mm-hmm. Well, but they need to keep a watch, because if you look at what's happened in Europe, everybody that's not a centrist or a leftist party, they are completely tarred as radical right wing, fascists and Nazis and everything else. They go after their posts on social media. They go after the individuals. Anybody who wants to champion their own national heritage, they're bad guys and need to be silenced. This is an international effort. And look, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy at all. Usually you can attribute things to really bad intent or incompetence that most people like to try and put on conspiracies. But this is clearly an effort across the board between the left and the Islamists to really turn back what President Trump has begun as far as reforming America and aiding other countries in reforming themselves across the world. It's scaring the heck out of the leftists that are out there, and they're fighting back.
He is Stephen Bucci. Served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen Bucci, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you next week.
Great. And Steve joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
At Terra Vista of Oak Brook Terrace, dementia care isn't just what we do. It's all we do. We specialize in caring for those with Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. We're on the forefront of dementia care with a barrier-free, stress-free environment, so residents can explore safely and feel at home. But what truly sets Terra Vista apart? Personalized care. We take the time to learn each resident's story, where they lived, their routines, former careers, even